Thank you for joining us. Hello, hello, lovely to see you. Hi, everyone's waving. Wave to Tabitha, wave to Cass. Welcome, hello everybody. Here we are. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Welcome everybody. My name is Fiona and I'm delighted that you're all here tonight as we launch Tabitha Bird's The Emporium of Imagination. It's so wonderful that we're back with our people. So thank you all for coming tonight. Also, thank you to everybody on Zoom. So welcome to everybody on Zoom. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land where we gather, and today we're on the Yagara and Turrbal, but I'm also very much aware that we have Zoom members from all around Australia, so I acknowledge the traditional owners of where we all gather. So what am I doing? Okay, I am telling you, we've had a very long day, a couple of days. We lost internet and, you know, we are completely reliant on internet. So at the moment, everything is being hotspotted around the place. So beware of hotspots because they're everywhere. So we will be social media. So feel free to engage in as much social media as you like, whether you're at home or you're here. We're Avid Reader 4101. It's a great way to let people know that Tabitha's book is out and ready to be bought on bookshelves all around Australia. Now I am going to say to the Zoom people that we will send a link around and that will have a chance for you to buy the book. Click on the link. Otherwise, phone the shop and you can have a personally signed copy, or email books@avidreader.com.au and we can take care of all of that. But if you're in person, you're lucky. You can just go straight to the counter, buy as many copies as you like, and then the wonderful Tabitha will be signing those copies at the front of the shop. And our little pop-up bar will be open for a short time after the event as well. I hope if you're in Zoom, you're enjoying a cup of tea or a nice glass of wine. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome the wonderful Cass Moriarty. She will be doing the In Conversation for us tonight. Cass is the author of two of our favourite books, The Promised Seed and Parting Words, but she's also a great friend to not just Avid Reader, but to all the authors in Brisbane and in Australia for all the many events she does and the very insightful reviews she does as well. So this is a good chance for you to follow Cass on social media. Cass Moriarty pops up everywhere, highly recommend it. You find out what events she's doing, you read her reviews, and then you see the most beautiful grandchild in the world as well. So now it's my great pleasure to hand over to Cass Moriarty.
Thank you, Fiona. Welcome everybody to the evening. Welcome to Avid Reader. As Fiona said, it's absolutely fantastic to be back here in person. I feel like it's been way too long since we've had these sorts of events. And you being here in person, buying books, recommending books to others, writing reviews, sharing your literary love around is what's keeping the community thriving. The booksellers, the publishers, and of course the authors. So thank you for coming, and please buy many books at the end. Now, magic, imagination, vintage treasures, connecting with lost loved ones, repairing broken dreams. The Emporium of Imagination by Tabitha Bird is a book full of possibility and comfort, with a cast of unforgettable characters and an optimistic message of hope. Tabitha is a writer and poet who lives in Boonah. Her debut novel, A Lifetime of Impossible Days, won the People's Choice Award at the 2020 Queensland Literary Awards. Both of her books feature the themes of trauma and grief, kaleidoscoped through the lens of magic realism. Please welcome Tabitha Bird. while she's getting her microphone sorted out, I want you all to fully appreciate the trouble that Tabitha and I went to tonight to dress appropriately. I have a tattoo of a ladybird on my hand, which is slightly faded, and Tab also has an actual proper ink tattoo of the cover of the book. So, you know, we've gone all out tonight. So I just wanted to, you know, make sure you knew that.
Thanks, guys. Okay, is this on now? Is it working? I can talk though. Can you hold up your arm again? There you go. All right, now you can hear me. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming out here tonight. I know lots of familiar faces in the audience, but also unfamiliar faces, but probably familiar names, because I know there's a lot of people who follow me on social media that are here tonight. So if that's you, come up and say hi, but can you also say how you know me, because yeah, help me out. That'd be great. And thank you so much, Cass. That's beautiful.
Yes, I just said a very familiar hello to a lady who I thought I knew from social media. It turns out I've never met her.
But you know her now.
I know her now. And she's writing books, and I have her bookmark.
There you go.
Now, look, I hope everybody's put their anonymous wishes into our Emporium box at the front. We're going to be reading some of them out later. For those of you on Zoom at home, what I would like you to do is imagine that the Emporium shop has landed in Brisbane and you can wish for anything you like in the world. And if you'd like to send through on the chat function your wishes, we can include you in this fabulous experience as well, except of course you won't be anonymous, but you know, that's all right. Just be careful what you write. All right. Now, I thought we'd start tonight. We wanted to make tonight a bit of fun, something a bit different. And so I thought that we'd start with a simple kind of either or question and answer for Tabitha to allow our audience members to get to know you a bit better. So what we're after is short, spontaneous answers. I did this with Trent Dalton. Don't be Trent Dalton, because every answer was, you know,
Long-winded.
10 minutes. I had to keep saying.
Gee, so unlike Trent.
I know. I had to keep saying. Now, I'm going to give you the proper mic.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to talk loudly. All right, I'm going to start you off. Oh, are they?
Are they both? Is this working?
Yeah.
Oh, they're both working.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think mine's louder.
Yours is loud, which is as it should be. Okay, I'm going to start you off easy.
Okay.
Dogs or cats?
Oh, God. Chihuahuas?
I think they're a dog, right?
I think they're people.
All right, good answer. Coffee or tea?
Tea all the way. I've never had a coffee in my life. I don't like coffee.
That's fascinating.
I love
How do you
this
function?
I know. I love the smell of coffee. If Matt will open like new coffee beans to put in his coffee machine, I'm like, oh God. But then I can't stand the taste.
I don't know if we could be friends anymore.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, so you said tea. So what if I said tea or wine?
Can we have wine flavored tea? Gosh, Cass. All right, I'm going to say tea because that's a nod to my grandmother. She would have said tea.
Gumboots or high heels?
Okay. High heels. I'm going to say high heels.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with my sons that are forever growing in the forward direction.
They are going to be very true.
Yeah, they are.
Favourite writing retreat? Would it be beach or mountain?
Beach. I live out in the mountains, which I adore, but I really miss the sand and surf. So yeah, beach.
Favourite child?
What are you going to give me, boys?
I'm just joking. That's a trick.
I'll just play that one out. I
Just
could
to
have got some
make-
stuff.
Just to make sure you were listening. Okay, if you had to choose only one, would it be Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram?
Instagram, all the way Instagram. I just absolutely love the visualness of Instagram. And those who follow me on social media will know me at all, know that I absolutely love art. So Instagram.
Great. So, you know, to follow her now on Instagram.
Yes, I'm Bird Tabitha because I didn't realise you could be. Anyway, I'm Bird Tabitha.
I'm sure I'll find you. All right, there's only one Tabitha. Retro or antique?
I think retro because that gives you more scope to be yourself. I think. Yeah, no, definitely retro.
Muffins or biscuits?
Muffins or biscuits? Well, if I was in the States, I used to live in the States. I was there for about 3 years, and they had no idea what a biscuit was. We actually went through a drive-through and we ordered biscuits, and I was like, how cool. Like, you can go through a drive-through and you can get biscuits. They were not biscuits. Yeah, with gravy. I was like, what the heck are these? So what was the question?
Muffins are a big part of this book, and biscuits were part of
Muffins are a huge part of this book. If you are a kid in my house, you've got it made. I like to bake, but I don't always like to eat what I bake. I just like the baking process. And so my boys, when they were younger, they're a bit older now, so it doesn't work so well, but when they were younger, I used to get the baking itch at about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And my babies knew that the sound of mama unwrapping something, or that fridge door, and then the oven, and then the muffin trays, then mama was up to baking goodness. And I used to bake it. And then when I was done, I'd sneak into rooms and I'd say, would you like some bedtime muffins?
You just throw every parenting rule out the window.
Yeah, I don't play by the rules. So they used to have bedtime muffins, like complete with melted butter, and they'd have their bedtime muffins. Yeah, they're good. You've got it made. Remember that. You've got it made.
You've got a really great mother. Okay, so we're going with muffins. I'm guessing.
Muffins, yeah.
Okay. Dancing or singing?
No one wants to hear me sing. Tell me, boys, does anyone want to hear me sing? No. Dancing, probably dancing. Like, both my boys have done ballet, and actually their ballet teacher is here tonight. She's up the back. Hey, Julie. She taught both my boys ballet for a number of years, and they absolutely loved it. Yeah, and they started moving outside of some boxes there in Boonah, and some other boys joined in not that long after. Dancing. At the end of every movie that I watch, you know, when the credits roll and the cool song comes up, don't you just want to move and groove? Okay, well, I do. So at the end of those movies, I get up and I dance, much to my children's embarrassment. I normally dance with my dog, like she's a chihuahua, so you can hold her and, you know. So anyway, yeah, dancing.
We're learning lots of
Yes.
Great. A lot of images that we're not going to go over our heads. All right, now this one might be layered. Keys or locks?
Keys, because then you've always got the opportunity to unlock something. So definitely keys.
Okay. Winter or summer?
Oh gosh, everybody that knows me knows I am a summer baby. I just don't even focus in. I can't function in winter. Matt, already it's too cold for me. Yeah, really. The other night I had my big fluffy socks on and Matt's shirt on, and I crept into bed and I was shivering and shaking. He was fast asleep and I curled up next to him with my cold hands.
Now we're getting a lot of information. Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, move on.
Okay, move on. Okay. Chocolate or hot chips?
I'm going to say chocolate. You know how we've just had Easter? I said to my family, don't get me any Easter eggs. I don't need any Easter eggs. But my boys got Easter eggs. And my eldest is down the coast at the moment with his girlfriend. Well, that's his problem. That's his problem. He left his Easter eggs behind. And last night I had a cup of tea and nothing to have with it. So we probably owe him a few Easter eggs.
He probably won't do that again.
He will. He's not actually a big chocolate fan. Poor boy. I don't know.
That's a score for you. All right, just a couple more. Library or museum?
Library, all the way library. So when I was growing up, I didn't really have very many friends. I know you're going to say, why? She's so wonderful. No, I'm joking. But I really had no friends. So the library was where I hung out so that I didn't sit by myself at lunchtime. So
We'll do that.
yeah, maybe that's a rite of passage for every writer, that you just didn't have any friends, so you sat in the library. I don't know. Library.
Okay, writing or reading?
Can I say both? I don't really think you've got any business writing if you're not reading.
That's very true.
You know?
That's very true.
Yeah, I was a reader before I was a writer, and even now, like, if you're going to put out creative things, like, oh. Okay, if you're going to put creative things into the universe, then that takes from your creative tank. So if you don't fill that creative tank, there's nothing to draw out of, And you seriously do get bored of your own imagination. I know that's hard for people to imagine, you know, if you've read my books, they're quite imaginative. But you need to be reading. And so I read a lot.
I think most writers do read.
I think so, yeah. Matt actually reads now too.
Well, of course he does.
He actually has read 3 books this year.
We're getting a lot of information about you too, Matt. Oh, this is good. All right, I've got 3 more questions. Would you rather be 10 or 80?
10, but knowing what I know now. I'd never go back to being 10 without at least knowing what I know now. 10 was not a happy age for me. 80, and I hope that I'm one of those old women that is doing things that when she's not in the room, other people are like, oh, holy crap, what is she up to now?
I think you're going to be that.
Good, that's the path I want to be on.
All right, safety or risk?
Risk all the way. We have a saying in my house that if you're not doing something that scares you, then you're not living. My eldest son is actually not here tonight because he this year got into the Brisbane Strikers, which is a soccer team in the National Premier Leagues, and he trains 4 nights a week. So tonight was one of their training, and yes, Mama did give him all her blessings to be there. So, and it's scary, you know, it's scary going after big dreams. It's scary going after things you want. It's scary just wanting something in this world and going after it, especially being, you know, a woman that really wants something outside of the ordinary. So, yeah. Does that answer that? Risk, yeah.
You did answer it. All right, last question. Honesty or protecting people's feelings?
Oh, no. Honesty, however, I think you can be honest without being rude. I hold myself to quite a huge standard of honesty, so you don't get BS from me. However, that doesn't mean you get rudeness from me, but I will sidestep questions like, does this look good on me? You know what? I love that you love it. I'm really happy that you are so happy in that outfit. That's honest, right?
That's very appropriate for how I'm dressed here. Okay, well, that was great. Thank you so much for answering all those really honestly. And I feel like we got to know you a little bit better. That was
Cool,
great.
thanks,
Now let's talk about this fabulous book. Tell us a little bit about the magical shop, which is the Emporium of Imagination. Tell us, how does it appear? What's its purpose? How long does it stay in one place? And what is it filled with?
Oh, so all the goss. Okay, so the Emporium of Imagination is a fantastical store that arrives in Boonah. And I say arrives because it isn't built. It arrives, it builds itself. And the Emporium has been traveling the world, and it sort of goes wherever it's needed. And where it is needed is where there is a town or a city where somebody there is really struggling to work through their own loss or their own grief. And so the Emporium arrives, and its primary goal is to bring joy and hope and fun, but also to provide an opportunity for people to either have one last phone call with somebody that they love and have lost, or to buy a vintage item that will connect them to somebody or something that they've lost. Because we don't just grieve people that have passed, we grieve lots of things. You know, we grieve dreams perhaps that we didn't pursue, or, you know, any number of things, even our youth, and not being able to do the things that we used to do anymore. So that's primarily what the Emporium gets up to, but it also gets up to a lot of mayhem and nonsense.
And how long does it stay in the one place?
It'll stay as long as it's needed, so you never know. So sometimes it's years, and sometimes it's only months. And in Boonah, I think it's really only a matter of months. Actually, we don't really know, because at the end of the book, I didn't say when it left.
It could still be there.
Could still be.
I might just ask Fiona if she would run and get the box, our box of wishes. And so what's the Emporium filled with? What does it look like on the inside?
What does it look like? So as you walk into the Emporium, so the Emporium of Imagination has a green front door. And the reason it has a green front door is because I was thinking it would have a red one. However, I threw that out to all my readers on social media and asked them, what colour should the Emporium's front door be? And they were adamant that it was green. So I was like, all right, the masses have spoken. So it's green. But it's not just green. When you get near this door, you can smell the door, and you can taste the colour. So you can taste the mint. I can't remember what else people taste when they're close to it. But anyway, it's a multi-sensory tour, if you like. And then as you go in, the carpet is not carpet. It is actually about ankle length grass. And all through the grass is daffodils and little ladybugs of all different colours and sizes, hence the ladybugs on the front of the cover. And then as you go in, there is the shopkeeper. Should I say who that is? No, I won't. So there's a shopkeeper, and there are all manner of things inside this store. So every imaginable vintage item you can think of. So from old teacups to old books, but the books have really interesting titles, and they do interesting things. They're not just ordinary books. And at one point in the story, the Emporium actually has a bit of a tanty, and one of the books spilled ink everywhere, quite literally, which is fun to clean up for the shopkeeper. But all manner of things, plus also it is renowned for its afternoon teas, which are also quite magical.
With proper scones.
Proper scones, however, proper, but with a twist.
Yeah. Now we had this box near the door earlier and asked all of you to put some wishes inside.
Well,
So
can I just tell you about this box? Because it's not just a box. So if you read the book,
it's not even a box. Actually.
it's not actually. So if you I'm going to say when you read the book, because you're all going to read the book, right? Okay, so when you read the book, at the beginning, Earlatidge comes to where the Emporium is going to set up, and he talks about having a vintage dome-topped lunchbox. This is it. I found it on eBay and fell in love with it and decided to write it into my book because I can.
So you found that first.
I found this first. And on the front of it, it had these initials, VHP. I was like, what am I going to do with that? And so my girlfriends happened to be over. One of them is up the back there. And I said, I need some magical words and they have to be VHP. So we spent a wine-filled afternoon coming up with stupid magical words that were VHP because it's already on the box. So we went with it. So it's not just a box.
It's not just a box. It's a magical box. You're right. Now we're going to have a bit of fun and read out some of the wishes that are in here. And also, apparently, there's been quite a few that have been sent through on Zoom.
Cool.
So would you like to
Take one?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just read out what some of the things people are wishing for.
So the wishes were, what would you want to see in the Emporium of Imagination? If the Emporium was real and you could go in there.
And you could wish for anything
Yeah.
in the world.
What would you wish? Okay, so this wish is, I hope my daughter will be happy in NZ with her boyfriend forever. That's a lovely wish. I like that one.
This one is, I wish for, I have no idea.
Oh, you need to read my book.
Yeah.
We prescribe you 6 copies. You cannot leave without them. All right. Let's see. I wish for an endless supply of books. This person is close to my heart.
This person says, may I please and thank you have a big smoochy kiss. I'm sure that's directed at
Yes,
you.
Peter, you may.
You already know who it's from. Because despite saying anonymous, she signed your name.
She wants to hang on a minute.
Off my kids.
She wants her kid. All right, you ready? I knew who that one was from. Oh, you've got the next one.
I've got one. I wish that one day this will be me. So we've got a writer in the audience. And it will be you. I'm here to grant your wish.
Me
One
too.
day you will be sitting up here with Fiona.
Absolutely. And I sat in the audience for years before I was an author, and I used to say, so yeah, the impossible is possible. Okay, I've got a world of peace, lack of want, and respect and empathy for all living creatures. This is a good one. Yes.
Love that. I've got another great one. Preservation of the planet. Nature is ace in its magnificence.
Like that's a good one too. Are we doing one more?
Yeah, I think we'll do a few more.
Okay, we'll do a few more.
And then we'll do a few.
This one is bubbles of happiness and health longevity. I like the bubbles thing. That could be in the Emporium.
Do you want to give us a couple from Zoom?
Yes. So I have, I would love all the music I love to always play around me, and all the books I love, and and get to love to keep filling my shelves, and world peace.
I love that. That's great.
Just a small. Okay, do you want to do, we've got so many in here. Do you want to do a couple more?
Let's do a couple more.
Let's do a couple more.
All right, I'll do one. Let's see. An old friend I haven't seen in decades appears for a glass of wine and a chat. This person's been in the Emporium. This is possible in the Emporium. Very cool.
Someone's wished for no COVID.
Yeah, I wish for that too.
A refilling bookshop that automatically fills with great books.
Love that. So Brisbane, as you all know, went into that 3-day lockdown. The first day of that 3-day lockdown was the day my book came out. Yay! Lots of fun. And I had events planned in Boonah because Boonah is a massive supporter of my books. And there's 3 little shops there in town that had plans to have the books out, and I was going to sign books for them, etc., etc. Yeah, it happened. There was some tears. If you follow me on social media, you know I wasn't very happy. But I supported the lockdown. I just, it was bad timing.
So following on from that one, I would love the time to read everything in my to be read pile.
Me too.
And that's a lot of time, LOL. And then someone also wants a self-fulfilling packet of Tim Tams.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
This is
Isn't that an
sort of
ad?
visual.
That was an ad from Tim Tam.
Yeah.
That should happen. That should be a thing. For there to never be a lost word.
That's a
I like that.
I've got a call to my dad to say all is well. The secret he kept is out, and we don't judge him for it. We accept and love him for all he was, all he gave.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that one. That's gorgeous. Happy lives for my children. Yes, amen to that.
I would love, like most people, to be able to chat with a loved one who has died. In my case, my great auntie who died last year. We would crochet and drink tea and eat cake, and she would love the Emporium for sure.
That's an awesome one. I would love to grant all of these. Lots of people have messaged me on social media after they've read the book and just said, I wish the Emporium was for real. I really want there to be an Emporium. Me too. Raining ladybirds. That'd be pretty cool. Especially if they all turned into lollipops. Did you see these? Okay. Actually, the real deal. Ladybird lollipops.
Ladybird lollipops. Which, if you're very lucky, you might get one. Now we'll just finish off with a few family ones to be able to hug my grandma one more time.
Love that.
Get my nan to share all of her stories that she never got to tell about her life. I wish for my daughter's mental health to improve and for her to know that they're loved. She's loved. I wish I was able to have baby number 3.
Oh, beautiful.
I know who that's not in the audience. All right, we're going to leave all of those
Okay,
in
sounds
there, put all of them back, and afterwards, if
I'd love to spend a day in the future with my best friend in 2021. I'd love to be able to gift half of the years of my life to my dog, Chili, so we could be side by side every day of our lives.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
I would love to touch and talk with my aunt. She's critically ill and I'm unable to travel. Let's see, that's it. I would love a few more hours just for reading and writing in each day. On demand.
Yes.
And we got lots of wishes for kindness and other things like that. So, thank you all so much for participating.
Thanks for playing.
And we'll leave this open at the end if you want to have a look at the wishes that are there.
Sounds good.
Now, some of the suitcases and the trunks in the Emporium are labelled in interesting ways. We've got looking glasses, open me last, hopeful things to eat, walk in my shoes, and toys of yesteryear. That was just some that I picked out.
Yes.
Tell us how you came to imagine those things, and are they things that you personally wish that you could access?
Good question. Yes, they are things I personally wish I could access. Also, I am just a massive lover of all things vintage and have been for a very, very long time. I think it started with my nanny who would give me vintage teacups and just had a massive love for that sort of thing herself. And I think I fell in love with it really, really young. And when I was writing this book, if you've read my first book, you'll know that in every book, I seem completely incapable of writing a book without me in the book in some way, shape or form. So the Emporium is no exception to that. I'm in the pages, and my family, much to their disgust, no, love, I don't know, they're in there too. Yeah, so I think just this huge love for vintage things, and I was thinking how cool it would be if there was a shop that not only sold vintage things, but then when you held that item, it connected you to a moment or a person that was really meaningful to you. So I don't know if you've ever been vintage shopping, but if you ever go with me, I take forever. But I like to hold the things and imagine all of the people that have used that thing or held that thing or had that thing in their house, and why that particular item has come to live in this, vintage shop. So yeah, turn up in my book.
And why did you decide to set the story in your hometown of Boonah?
Once again, I'm also incapable of setting books anywhere. I was actually talking to my publisher about this recently, because she was like, we've had 2 books in Boonah, are we going to get another one? I was like, I don't know, how many impossible magical things will people believe will turn up in Boonah?
Pretty soon it's going to be a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
The tourists are going to be expecting something amazing.
I don't know, I think Boonah is an ordinary magic. I often talk about ordinary magic as being a type of magic that actually exists in the real world. And Boonah is an ordinary magic. The town itself, for me, is quite magical. There actually is a vacant block of land between the real estate agent and I think it's the butcher that has a gate on it. And it's a very long, narrow, vacant block of land. And I walked past it many times and thought, why would you own it? And what would you ever put on it? And so when I was thinking about the Emporium, that is exactly where I imagine the Emporium to be. But the people of Boonah are kind of an ordinary magic as well. Boonah is the first place that I've ever lived that's really felt like home. Matt and I got married and then left Australia and travelled the world for 5 years, had a baby, came home, and nowhere felt like home. We'd been travelling for forever, then came home with this little baby. I hadn't really known a home as a child. And so when our third lovely little one came to be in our lives, Matt was like, well, we can up our mortgage here in the Bayside suburbs of Brisbane, and because I'll just work around the clock to afford this mortgage, or we can do this move out to Boonah. And so we decided on the move out to Boonah because I actually like seeing my husband. Thought the boys might like seeing him occasionally too. So we moved out to Boonah, and the people just welcomed us with open arms. And I have, lots of just beautiful souls out there and very imaginative souls out there. There are lots of artists living out in Boonah, so I fit in.
And you're doing wonders for the tourism of Boonah too. All right, let's talk a little bit about the story. So introduce us to some of the main characters and where they are in their lives at the beginning of the story. So particularly I want to know about Earlatidge, Enoch and Anne.
Okay, well, when the story opens, we meet a character who is named Earlatidge Hubert Umbray, and that name just popped in my head. Lots of people ask me where that one came from. I don't know. It just popped in my head, but it's a big name, but it's also a magical name. It's not actually his real name. So when you read the book, you'll understand why he took that name. And he has been the custodian for the Emporium of Imagination now for almost 11 years. So he's been traveling with the shop, and his primary role is to find the shopkeeper that will open the shop, also to hand out notes throughout Boonah, inviting people to come and have that one last phone call with somebody that they have lost or something that's important to them that they're grieving for. So that's his 2 primary roles. However, he has been ignoring his own grief for the entire 11 years that he's been the custodian of the shop. He's been focusing on everyone else and putting his own in a box because it's just too painful for him to face. So that's Earlatidge. The second character that we meet is 10-year-old Enoch, and that is his real name. And Enoch is just this big-hearted, quirky boy, but also he's really grieving the loss of his dad. And in a way that's kind of messy because he really feels like he may actually personally be responsible for his dad's death. And that's a huge weight for any child to actually shoulder. But kids do shoulder things like that. Like kids, when trauma happens to children, they usually make it about them, that they've done something to cause that in some way they're at fault. And Enoch is really no different. So we meet little Enoch, and then the third person that we meet is Anne. And she's a character that I actually named after my grandmother. And very sadly, in April of last year, I actually lost my nanny to cancer. And so when I was writing this book and I needed a name for this third character, I thought Anne would be a nice little nod to my grandmother. So Anne is in the book, and Anne is also dealing with a really messy grief. She is also grieving the loss of Enoch's dad. She's connected to that family. However, she hasn't let the boys know how she's connected because she's protecting a really big secret that she doesn't want to come out and that she doesn't think should come out. And she also feels very personally responsible for the death of Enoch's dad in a really, probably in a really bigger way even than Enoch does. So we've got three characters that are all in their own individual ways running from what hurts them, which is really human. I think most of us run from what hurts us until we get to the point at which running from it is now more painful than facing it. And usually we don't face things until that point comes. And these three characters are no different. So that's our three POVs.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that gives a really good idea of the setup at the beginning of the novel. The two most important roles of the Emporium are to connect with lost loved ones and to repair broken dreams. So I'm wondering why you focused on those two particular themes, and what did you draw from your own experience that informed your writing?
So I began the Emporium of Imagination a long time ago when I was actually waiting for my first book to get picked up by a literary agent. And for any writers in the audience who have written novels, the whole querying process and then waiting for publishers is a long process. It's really worth it. It's really long. And the advice to writers is don't get bored, write. So I started the Emporium of Imagination as a way to just entertain myself. And so I had the characters, I had the idea of a shop, but it was very different. And I had a writer who lived in New Zealand who was a friend of mine, and every night at 8 o'clock for an hour, we'd clock in, we'd write together for an hour, and then we'd send each other our work. And that was really cool because I wanted the chapter that I sent her to like have her on the edge of the seat. She wanted to know what happened next. So that's how the Emporium started. But then after A Lifetime of Impossible Days was published, and then my publisher was asking what else I had on the table, I said I did have something else on the table and sent her the first 3 chapters because I thought she just wanted to know like what I might be working on. But she took those first 3 chapters and she took them to the acquisitions meeting. I didn't realize that was going to happen. I know that now. And she sold it on the first 3 chapters. And so she said, we love it. We want to buy it. There was no rest of the book because by that stage I'd really rewritten the book, and I was really pulling it apart and rewriting it again. So those first 3 chapters, they were beautiful. But after that, it really went downhill. So I just smiled and nodded and went, sure, yeah, I can produce a book. And during the time of writing that, my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer. And they told us straight off the bat, it's terminal, that this isn't going to get better. You know, she's 84 years of age. That's a great age for a woman. You know, that's an average. And I was just like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is my nanny. You can give that diagnosis to other people, but this is nanny. You don't understand. You don't tell nanny that she has a terminal illness, and nanny's not dying. There was only 40 years between me and my grandmother, 40 years exactly, 20 between me and my mother, and then 20 between my mother and her mother. So we're all 20 years apart. There was actually 5 generations of females in my family, all 20 years apart. I broke that because I did not want a baby at the age of 20. Anyway, my grandmother was happy about that. So when she was diagnosed with cancer, I, like all writers, used my writing as a way to sort through my own emotions. And I was amazed at how really messy grief is. Like, it's not just this sadness. There was guilt tied up in it for me. There was happy. There was times where I was actually really happy, and yet I was still grieving. And so I actually gave all of those emotions to my characters and saw what they would do with them. But one of the big things for me that I really realized is that I really wished 2 things. One, I wanted my grandmother to stay with us forever. I never wanted to let go of her. Secondly, I wanted her to go. And I wanted her to go because she was suffering, but I also wanted her to go on a really personal level. I just dreaded every phone call that was going to be the phone call that she was in hospital, or this was going to be the moment. I dreaded it. And I also was like looking forward to it, because in a way that was going to be the end of my pain. And I felt so bad about that, because, you know, I didn't really want her to go. And yet on the other hand, I did. And I just realized that that's grief. Grief is not black. It's not white. It's not quiet.
It's very complicated.
It's complicated, yeah. And so I just wanted to explore it, because I think we've got too many taboos in society when we're not talking about things like that, and it just leaves us lonely.
And so when you write about trauma and grief, you obviously write through magic realism. What does that allow you to do as a writer?
Yeah, so I'm obsessed with magical realism. Both my books are magical realism. I didn't actually realize that's what I was writing. So when I first wrote A Lifetime of Impossible Days, I was querying that work to an agent. And the agent said to me, "Oh, so you're writing magical realism? That's awesome." And I went, "Yeah." Google, what is magical realism? And realized that's what I was writing. So I like to say that the genre chose me. It was really just something that flowed out of me. I've always been obsessed with the impossible and where the line between reality and what could be possible actually is. So magical realism is this lovely way that you can start talking about some really big things, really big topics, or really emotionally laden topics, but with a little bit of distance, because there's that magic. So the reader's not so up close to everything. And the magic brings in that lightness. So you also get to play with, you know, a great amount of hope, and then just have a tour through my mind and the things that I'm interested in. So magical realism is just this gorgeous way of seeing the world through different eyes, and perhaps looking at something maybe dark or traumatic in a different way that makes it more accessible.
Tell us about the real story behind the wind phone in Japan.
So in my book, there are obviously phones where you can have that one last phone conversation with someone that you've lost. As I was writing the book, I was procrastinating and happened to be mucking around on my computer and going through my emails. And I actually subscribed to something called Atlas Obscurus. If you're a writer and don't subscribe to that, I highly recommend it. It basically just gives you every couple of times a week, I think, emails where they link to these cool stories about really interesting things that are happening around the world. One of those articles was titled The Wind Phone. And when I saw that title, I was like, well, that's just too interesting to ignore. Clicked on it, opened it up. And the wind phone is a real thing. So there's a Japanese gardener, still living, as far as I'm aware, who lives in a town that was massively affected by the tsunami of 2011. So if you remember 2011, there was that big earthquake off the coast of Japan, and it caused a tsunami. Well, prior to the tsunami, the year before the tsunami, he built this gorgeous garden. He happens to be a garden designer. And in the garden, he placed a phone booth, an actual phone booth. And inside the phone booth, he placed a rotary phone, a disconnected rotary phone. And he used the phone to call his cousin who had passed the year before from cancer. When the tsunami hit, about 10% of his village lost somebody, which was a massive number. Like, that's huge. If you think about the population of Japan, so 10% is huge. So he opened up his garden and that phone for people to come and use that phone to talk to people that they'd lost. And thousands of people did. And to this day, thousands of people from all over the world actually pilgrimage to that phone and use the phone, and they talk on the wind. So their grief is carried on the wind to their loved ones. And I was obsessed with this because it's like, isn't it amazing how our imagination is such a powerful healing tool? And I was like, this has to turn up in my book. So that was the seed.
It's a beautiful story. Beautiful story. Tell us a little bit about the owner's book of Grieving.
It's a book within a book. I've read books where they've got like little book within a book, and I've always thought that was so cool. So I wanted to play around with it from a writing perspective, but more importantly, as I was writing this book, I was amazed by how much in Western culture, once the funeral's done, the flowers dry and are died, people stop bringing around the meatloaf. And that can really only be, sometimes just a couple of weeks after the funeral. And that's it. A lot of people then don't talk about it. They don't go up to their friends and say, hey, how are you going? I know you lost X, Y, and Z. How are you coping? And usually the reasons given are, I don't know what to say, or I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I don't want to make that person sad. However, what I've experienced after losing my grandmother is that the lack of talking about it actually leaves the person grieving very alone. It says two things to that person grieving. One, it says it's not okay to talk about this. Either your friends and family are not comfortable enough to bring it up or don't know how to bring it up, so they don't bring it up, which I understand. But for you as the person who's lost someone, it can be so isolating and so lonely because those conversations stop. So the Owner's Guide to Grieving is this little book, and it just turns up in town to different people throughout the town, typically not the main characters, just other people in town. And it offers people the chance for the very first time, perhaps, to write on a blank page about their own grief. And then more powerfully, it gives them the opportunity to read about other people who've experienced loss and what that's like for them. And what it does for people in the town is it starts to connect them. They start to understand that they're not alone, that they do have things that they can add positively to someone else's life by simply just saying, I'm a friend and I'm here. And
it really engenders a great sense of community.
Yeah, it does. It starts to really link them.
I have got so many more questions, but we're going to have a quick quiz and then we're going to have some audience questions. So we need to move on.
Sounds good.
But honestly, so many other things I wanted to ask you about. I really have to ask you, how much fun did you have collecting all those vintage treasures?
So my husband will attest, the minute I started writing the book, I also got on eBay. And I started ordering these gorgeous vintage items. I didn't actually have any clue what I was going to do with them. I just started ordering them. So the Emporium literally started turning up in our house. Now, afterwards, I decided how I was going to use them for marketing, and I actually sent those gifts out to key influencers so that they would feel connected to the Emporium. So they were useful, Matt. They were super useful. But we just had the biggest collection. I mean, it was everywhere, of all of these gorgeous vintage items. It was kind of sad to see go. I kept it.
I'm sure you did. All right, we're going to do a little pop quiz. We're going to do this very quickly. And if you know the answer, or even close to the answer, you get a lollipop thrown at you. And there's special ladybird lollipops.
I'll try and throw well.
Yeah, try and throw well. Now, have you got questions too?
I do.
We're going to do this together. Yeah. All right, I'll start. So some of these are about ladybirds and some of them are about other things to do with school. How many different coloured ladybirds appear in nature?
Have a guess.
Have a guess.
What do you reckon?
5.
Oh, that's a good guess. It's more than 5.
10.
Less than 7. Come on, that only gives you
Okay, so it's at least
I don't want to throw
red, orange, black, and yellow, pink, and white. There you go. There's some white ladybirds. Okay, here you go.
Which decade were rotary phones first in wide usage? So not when they were first developed, but which decade do you reckon they were in wide usage? Do you reckon? Yeah.
Pick a decade.
40.
Close.
Oh,
Who said
50s?
50s?
Who said 50s? Yeah.
Who was 50s?
How many species of ladybird are there in the world? And for an extra lollipop, how many in Australia? Have a guess. Many more than 200.
A billion. 200.
Not a billion.
5,000.
Oh, that's it right there.
6,000 in the world, 500 in Australia.
Okay. All right. I think some people here will know this. What personal significance does wisteria hold for me? So it's in the book, but why? Like, if you're on social media, you know this. You know this answer, Julie. Yes. So my grandmother, when Matt and I were first married 23 years ago, my grandmother dried her wisteria and then she threw the petals at me. And then every single year on our anniversary, my grandmother sent me a card with dried wisteria in it. Even when we were living overseas and I was like, I don't know how she's getting through this to customs. She would send this card with the dried wisteria in it. And then I have had one of those cards every single year for 23 years. except for last year. So September is our anniversary. My grandmother died in April. So in the September, no more wisteria cards. So that's what wisteria turns up in the book. And I also have brand new ink with wisteria on it too. Good job, Julie.
To kill a ladybird is unlucky because it brings what?
She likes the ladybird just for being like, that would have been an answer I would have given.
Because we're in a hurry, we'll accept it. It's actually sadness and misfortune. It's just kind of
Yeah.
like that.
Okay, I'm going to, this is a cool one. So name 3 now deceased people that you would invite for dinner. Who would you invite?
And any answer is okay. So you don't even have to, you can't
You
be
don't
wrong.
have to think, really. 3 people you'd love to come to dinner. Yeah? What was it? Love it.
Oh, beautiful. What do ladybirds eat?
Yes. Aphids. So at my house, we don't spray for anything because I love the ladybirds. Okay, I already mentioned this one. What colour is the door of the Emporium?
How many? Well, no. What does the number of spots on a ladybird indicate? It's not age.
Sex.
Sorry,
Sex.
everybody thinks it's age.
It's
It's
sex.
not gender.
Species.
Species. That's right.
Cool. All right. What does the colour green often symbolise? So this was really cool. Once I actually... New life. Who said new life? Yeah, the other one is nature or good luck if you're Irish.
How long does an adult ladybird live? Between
When my daughter catches it. And when it suffocates in the jar.
she said, from when my daughter catches it until it suffocates in a jar.
She's already got a lollipop.
All right, have a guess. Sorry? Yeah, good guess. It's between 1 and 3 years. So that's good.
I didn't know they lived that long. Okay.
Have one more. Wanna do a couple?
Yeah,
The
let's
cat-
do
the
that.
cat one.
Yeah, let's do the cat one. Okay, so in my new book, there's a cat called Pickled Onions. What's the best name for a cat you've ever known? Katie. You can have a lollipop. What else? Calico. Love it. Can you pass back to? Oh, there you go. Beetlejuice. So when I was trying to name the cat in my book, I once again threw it out to my tribe on social media and asked them, what would you name the cat? I've got a cat that's turned up on the pages of my book. I can't think of a name for it. What would you name it? And someone came up with the name Pickled Onions, which I absolutely loved. However, someone else came up with a name. I didn't love the name so much, but she told me a true story about her cat that actually brings her little gifts. So her cat goes around the house, selects little items and puts them in front of her. If she doesn't pay appropriate attention to these items, oohing and ahhing and thanking the cat for them, cat gets quite grumpy. I just thought, how cool. So that's why in my book, Pickled Onions like travels around town bringing little gifts, because that's, it's real, actually happens.
I think we're going to skip to the end, but we might just do the last 2 questions. You asked the one about Enoch.
Okay.
Yeah.
In my book, one of the main characters, whose name is Enoch, falls in love with a really strange item. What is it?
Yes.
Indeed. And my son, who's sitting right down here, fell in
Very
love with a
embarrassed
coconut when he was 7. He fell in love with a coconut. We'd watched, what's that movie? Castaway. Is that it? Yeah. Anyway, there were coconuts in this movie. And Cyrus said, he was only young at the time, 6, he said, I've never had a coconut. So Matt, being the great dad that he is, went down to the IGA, bought the boys a coconut, brought it home, went to the shed and started sharpening his axe. In the meantime, Cyrus had discovered that when you look at a coconut, it's got 2 little eyes and a little nose.
Cyrus just wants to
And
disappear into the floor.
You are the son of an author, so that's not possible. And so the coconut went missing. Matt came back to cut the coconut in half and the coconut was gone. About a week later, there was this really odd smell coming from their room, which, if you've had boys, you ignore a lot of smells, but this was even worse than the normal stuff that comes out of boys' rooms. And we pulled back the covers, Cyrus's bed, and there's like all this hair, for lack of a better word, all through his bed. And we thought, what's going on here, babe? And he is holding this coconut and just sobbing. And he's like, my coconut is dying because it was leaking from its eyes and from its nose. He was traumatized, people. He ran to my husband and said, Dad, you have to save Coco. This is the first time we knew the coconut had a name. And so Matt, once again, being the wonderful man that he is, said, it's okay, son. I have a degree in fruits of the island surgery. I can fix this. Now, it's going to look worse before it looks better. However, if you leave it with me, I think we've got this just in time. Matt then took the coconut to his shed, cut it in half and scooped out the rotting flesh, and then disinfected it, boiled it, disinfected it, and then was looking for a way to glue this coconut back together. Now, if you've ever tried to glue a coconut, if you use normal glue, every time that coconut gets dropped, it'll just split again. So you need a glue that's going to adhere, have flexibility. So Matt went down to the hardware and said to the dude, I need a glue that's strong but has some flexibility. And the dude's like, okay, why? What are you trying to glue together? Matt's like, straight-faced, a coconut. And Cyrus was with him. Cyrus was very straight-faced because this was serious. This was life and death. Coconut's life hung in the balance. So Matt actually found the miracle glue was silicone mixed with this super grippy glue. Put it together. Coconut then lived in our home. Coconut lived in our home for many, many years. Every birthday or an event we had in our house, Coconut came out to dinner. He came to restaurants. And that was all wonderful, except at night when Cyrus took Coconut to bed, Coconut would roll out as he went to sleep. He'd let go of Coconut, and Coconut would roll out of the bed. We've got an old Queensland with wooden floors. So come around, 11, 12, when we were just going off to sleep with this boom, roll. And we mentioned to Cyrus's grandmother, who's just up the back there, wave, that we were having this problem with Coconut. So she began making coconut clothes. She knitted him a little hat so that when he rolled out of bed, he wouldn't bang his noggin and also scare the living bejeebers out of the rest of us that lived in the house. So Coconut actually had his own clothing range there for many, many years. So when you read the book and you hear those stories in the book, they're real. I lived with a coconut, people.
That's an absolutely beautiful spot to end. We might just have time for a few questions, do we? Or are we nearly out of time?
I think time for a couple of questions.
Okay, great. If anyone in the audience has a question for Tab, just put your hand up, wave. Otherwise, I have plenty more.
I'll start with one from our Zoom audience,
okay.
if that's okay. So Sarah Ross says, I love the book already. Mine's on order from the library. What was it your idea for the fabulous title?
Yes, and you don't often get to keep titles. Publishers love to do things like change titles. But when I pitched them the book, I already had this title, and Beverly Cousins, who's my publisher at Penguin, loved it, and so we kept it. So yes, it was my idea. I actually had the title for the book and then thought, no, I need a story.
There's a question just here.
How long did it take you to write the second book compared to the first one?
Okay, question was, how long did it take me to write the second book compared to the first one? So the second book, the very, very rough draft of it started many years ago, so probably about 5 or 6 years ago. However, once I sold those first 3 chapters and Penguin loved them, you're on a wonderful thing called a contract. And a contract's great. Authors love them. However, contracts have things called deadlines. And you have to pay attention to these deadlines. You can't just watch them whiz by. You do actually have to pay attention to them. So the second book was much faster because I actually had to produce something worth reading in, I think, 6 months. And during that period of time, my grandmother was sick and then also passed. So I did actually end up at the end asking for a little bit of an extension. But the second one was much faster than the first one because I didn't really realize I was writing a book with the first one.
Question at the back, please.
No pressure, but have you got a third on its way?
Thank you, Chris. The question was, do I have a third book on the way? Yes. Yes, I do have a third book on the way. I've realized that for my own mental health, it's not good for me not to be writing. So when I don't have a strict writing routine, but I write regularly, and a new and very quirky character turned up for me. She's young. I usually have 3 characters that tell my stories. This next one's probably not going to be any different. And one of them is usually quite young. So there is this very strong young voice, and she is actually Wonder. So if you imagine Wonder was an actual person, this little 4-year-old girl is Wonder, and it's her story as it relates to 2 other main characters in the book. And at the moment, the tentative title, which I don't know if I'm going to get to keep, is The Healing Giggle of Wonder. So we'll see if I actually get to keep that one.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah. Would you consider, with all the healing of trauma, etc., that this is actually what an underlying history?
That's a great question. So the question was, with all the writing of healing and trauma, would I consider the spiritual element of this book, that it has a spiritual book? So what really amazed me and blew me out of the water, when I first wrote A Lifetime of Impossible Days, I knew that it would find an audience. I didn't realize that the audience would take it and make it their own, which is the hugest compliment a writer can ever receive. But I have literally had emails from people saying that they have taken that book into their therapist or their counsellor, or whoever it is that they're talking through their own trauma with, and for that they are using it as a way to work through their own trauma. So I think it has already happened, but in really meaningful and very personal ways to the individual people who've taken it and run with it. The Emporium is beginning to have its own effects. I've had many people tell me that now they don't feel so silly for having rituals around wanting to talk to those that have passed, and that it actually is meaningful and powerful to maintain those connections, and that they actually feel those people around in their lives, and that they have started up conversations with people about their grief and their need to talk about things. I won't name any names, but one person did say to me, that they'd lost a baba before the baby was born, and that no one really acknowledged that as a loss. And for the very first time ever, she really felt like she could actually talk about that as a personal loss, that this was an actual being that she had wanted desperately to bring into the world, that she wasn't able to. And it's a grief, and it's not just a grief for that period of time, but she said every time she saw mums with bubbas in the park, or birthdays of nieces and nephews or whatever, that there was that level of grief, and she for the first time was able to open up conversations in safe spaces with people around her that were close to her. So I think it has happened. Would I ever personally put out a spiritual book? Probably not, because I just like to think that when I show up on the page in a vulnerable and real way, that I invite connection, and whether or not other people take up that invitation or not is up to them, but it's there. I am there on my pages. So yeah.
I think that's a really beautiful place to finish. Look, whether you're 8 or 108, this book will touch your heart. Please join me in thanking Tabitha and welcoming the Emporium of Imagination to Brisbane.
So massive thank you to Tabitha and all that you do to support authors. It's just an amazing space that you offer. And to Cass, who is a fierce advocate for authors here in Australia. So thank you. Can we give Cass? I have books that have uninstalled.
Thanks, everybody. I guess we're saying goodbye to our Zoom.
Yes, and thank you to everybody on Zoom. Can everybody say goodbye, Zoom?
Bye. Thank you for joining us.
Bye, Sarah. Bye.
Tabitha's book,
Yes,
either
bye,
online
Tabitha's book.
or
How many copies?
Yeah. Thank you all very much for joining us for what has been a really wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you, Cass Moriarty, Star. Thank you, Tabitha. We wish you all the best. I will be working out why these microphones are still not working. And do head to the front, the books for sale at the counter, and we'll have Tabitha signing in the window.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of fun walking around.
Some of those.